I do a lot of debates on my stream, so it's all about like rhetoric, how good of an argument you can make. But it's, protesting's not really about that, right? I mean, the good arguments in favor of scaling back the use of fossil fuels were made decades ago. They've been made empirically and perfectly. The perfect arguments for this already exist. It's a settled subject. The issue isn't whether or not you can prove your case, because you can and have. The issue is just, well, okay, now that you've proven it, like, nothing's actually changed, because it turns out the people who don't want to believe what you're saying are the ones in power, or who don't care what you're saying. So at that point, it stops really being about, convincing, and just becomes like a matter of mobilization, And I think, given the fact that we're pretty confidently marching towards our deaths as a species, or at the very least towards like widespread destruction with how we're dealing with the climate change, we're a bit beyond the point of like, well, make sure your protests don't inconvenience anyone. The funny thing is that the Van Gogh painting thing and all the other stuff that Just Stop Oil's been getting a lot of attention for lately didn't really entail inconveniencing people at all, outside, I guess, a couple hours restoration work for some museum employees. I mean, very minor stuff like that. But people get really, I guess, kind of like reflexively angry when they see that sort of thing, not understanding that like their anger at that is like is the critical hypocrisy that's being pointed out, right? Well, the world is being sort of catapulted into doom, but this is what you're angry over. Like you're okay with the multi-billion-dollar fossil fuel companies and the people who they buy out in the media nonstop recycling lies for the sole purpose of enriching themselves at the expense of 8 billion humans. But why soup can at Van Gogh, And you could never highlight that hypocrisy without doing something to make them angry.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And it's like the thing is, we've been voting, we've been marching, we've been signing petitions, we've been lobbying, we've been holding our little banners outside of government for decades upon decades upon decades. And where has it ended up? We're still floundering about whether or not to actually transition away from fossil fuels, despite the fact that, as you said, the consensus is in. We have to. And I would say, unfortunately, someone having to clean up some paint or a bit of soup compared to as a human society, us trying to clean up the carnage that we're going to be facing because of the climate crisis, it just doesn't really compare. And I would say one is far, far worse for the most vulnerable of us than the other.
Oh no, certainly. Yeah, it in a purely like rational sense. Not only is the math easy, it's you kind of have to be deluding yourself to not understand it, right? There is no inconvenience that Just Stop Oil could cause that could measure up to even a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of what we're all going to experience, and frankly still have, or like right now,
Yeah,
with energy prices, with all of the human damage that's been done due to automobile reliance, which is a very artificial way of constructing cities that was done because auto manufacturers worked in tandem with, in your case, with city planners after World War II, because most of your cities were bombed into rubble. So, they were rebuilt with an automotive focus in a way that was meant to mimic a lot of American, city design, which was itself a product of Henry Ford and other like automobile titans working to sort of shape the future of American cities. So like if you scale back like far enough, like there's just no comparison, right? And you can make all the rational arguments you want, but like God, I was just a little child when an inconvenient truth came out. And it's funny how in the scope of 22 years, we've gone from that movie on climate change being about like, hey, here's what we have to lose, here's what's going to happen, like here's the risk that we face. Oh wait, the movie came out in 2006? Why did I think it came out before 9/11? Look, whatever the case was, I was a baby in 2006 too. Anyway, back then it was like, well, here's the threat we face. And now, what was that movie? Don't Look Up? It's the
yeah,
movies on climate change are like, oh, isn't it funny and nihilistic how everyone is ignoring the fact that we're all doomed and we could change it, but we're not? So clearly, like, the arguments here are not like the problem at hand. The problem is that, like, every system by which you educate and inform people is controlled by wealthy people, and wealthy people just tend to have their hands in the pockets of billionaires, and billionaires get along with each other, and a lot of them are just,
yeah.
yeah, enriched by fossil fuels. I feel enormously optimistic about the work that you're doing. People denigrate this stuff. They think it's unserious, but At the end of the day, when we're talking about margins like this and issues like this, the metric of success, I think it really comes down to how much attention you're driving to the issue. And in that respect, obviously, it's been overwhelmingly effective in doing this. At personal sacrifice, too, of course, because people don't generally like being arrested if they can help it. If there were people who are interested at getting involved in the fashion that you have, is there any advice you would give them?
I would say, for those of you that are in the United Kingdom, Just Stop Oil, the website is just juststopoil.org. You can find out how to get involved and find local groups. And I actually think, I can't remember what they're called, but there is a similar branch in America. Because there's this big network, it's called the A22 network, and there are climate activist groups across the world right now who are all working together to try and achieve similar aims. And there is a branch in America, and they have been doing roadblocks on major highways, I think. But again, it's not getting the kind of coverage that it should. So I would encourage people to try and find out if there are people around you doing that kind of thing. And if there isn't, there will still be like-minded people who might be willing to try to do something, right? It all comes back to a couple of people deciding that they can't abide by the way things are anymore and trying to work together to figure out a way to change that,
I fully agree. It's not something for which I have much experience myself, so I would always defer to your input there. I try to sell sort of direct action and, organizing to my audience in fairly specific ways. Would you agree with me? Would you say, that going out there, joining up with Just Stop Oil or whatever else, it's a good way to meet the bitches, whoever the bitches are to you? That's just a good, it's just you go outside. A lot of people don't do that these days. You say hi to some nice people. It works, right?
Yeah, definitely. I have made some amazing friends in my time working with Just Stop Oil. And another thing that's really, really good about being a part of an activist group is, especially one about the climate crisis, is you are surrounded by people who understand how terrifying the situation we're in is. You can just be like, hey, isn't it scary? And everyone would be like, yeah, no, totally, I get you. And also, statistically, climate activists tend to be more gay.
Yeah, I'd say so.
I'm not sure about why, but we do tend to be more gay.
Yeah, I've seen the videos of the Just Stop Oil protesters. These bitches do indeed have blue hair and pronouns. And you're all Tyler Durden pilled, you're Fight Club pilled, All the weak babies in chat wish they could be splashing banks windows with paint, but they can't because they're like the guy in Fight Club who's not named, They're a cuck, they're a beta, but they could be alpha by joining up with you guys and helping out.
Oh, definitely. Forget touching grass. Come and hug some trees.
Exactly. It's like trees, the large grass, for strong people. I really do appreciate you coming on.
No, I'm happy to get this kind of stuff out there. That's what it's all about. Getting people aware of the campaign and getting people getting involved. It's not just enough to have people talking about it. We need people joining us because we can't continue doing this kind of thing without people helping us.
Certainly not.
Thank you for having me on. It's been a delight talking to you.
Likewise. Have a wonderful day.
You too.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye.
There we go. Now we're all Just Stop Oil pilled. Based and activism pilled. I think this is kind of worthless if big countries like India or China don't participate. Well, yeah, but you can get them to participate a lot easier if countries in the West are actually taking this seriously, right? Like if America and Western Europe formed an economic bloc to through trade deals and through diplomacy highly incentivize non-fossil fuel energy development, we could do a lot of good, like a world-saving amount of good. Seriously, if we wanted to, there is absolutely enough wealth and productivity in the West for us to finance a pretty clean green energy shift in China at least. India might be more difficult because the population's still booming and there's not as much sort of industrial control over there, but it could still be done, I think. And we have to try. I mean, what's the alternative? Not trying,